In our last video, we explored the history of PlayStation, how one console changed into game industry forever. But what about the part that we often hold in our hands and rarely think about? The controller. From simple buttons and no vibration to adaptive triggers and haptic feedback that feels like you're walking on snow, the PlayStation controller has quietly evolved alongside the console itself. It all started with 4 strange symbols. No sticks, no rumble, just a D-pad and a dream. But today, it is a piece of technology that reacts to your every move. So, in this episode, we're about to dive into the evolution of the PlayStation controller and discover how it became one of the most iconic tools in gaming history. My name is Luthfi Adriyan, and this is Saturday Stories. We have already seen how the PlayStation was born from a surprising turn of events and how it went on to change the way people saw gaming. But a console itself isn't complete without its controller. It is the one thing we actually touch, the bridge between the player and the game. And when Sony entered the scene, they didn't just bring powerful hardware, but they brought a whole new way to hold the game in your hands. So without any further ado, let's talk about the controller that started it all, the one that came with the very first PlayStation. Let's start at the very beginning with the controller that came bundled with the very first PlayStation in 1994. At a glance, it might look pretty simple. No analog sticks, no vibration, and definitely no touchscreen. But this controller actually changed a lot. Sony took inspiration from the Super Nintendo, but it made more 3D, more ergonomic, and added something other consoles didn't have at the time. The 4 shoulder buttons, the L1, L2, R1, and R2, double what Nintendo offered. But the real twist is the buttons, not the letters like the other consoles, but the symbols, which is triangle, square, circle, and cross. Each of those symbols had a meaning. The triangle meant a view or camera, the square for menus or maps, circle to say yes, and cross to say no. And the reason for symbols? Sony wanted a controller that didn't rely on letters, something that anyone from any country could understand. But as games became more 3D, players needed more than just a D-pad, and Sony was ready for that. By the mid-90s, 3D games were starting to take over, and Sony realized a D-pad just wasn't cutting it anymore. So in 1996, they introduced something completely new, which is the dual analog controller. For the first time, the PlayStation controller had 2 analog sticks, one for movement and one for a camera, a big deal for the 3D games. The dual analog designed because the games like Ape Escape, Ace Combat, and Gran Turismo increasingly demanding the precise controller. And if you look closely, there was a little analog button right in the center, because not all games supported analog input yet. You actually had to turn it on manually. But that controller has no rumble yet, no vibration, and honestly, this controller didn't take off like Sony hoped, especially in Japan where players weren't fully sold on the new layout. But still, it was an important step, a so-called prototype for something bigger. And just a few moments later, Sony figured out what was missing. They took the dual analog, added one big feature, and changed the controller game forever. And it was called the DualShock, which stands for the dual analog with the shock features. And the DualShock changed the way we feel games, for real. With built-in rumble motors, it could make your hands shake when an explosion hit or when your car crashed into a wall in Gran Turismo. The analog sticks were also improved, the better grip and better control. And yeah, the controller itself, it's bulkier, heavier, but way more immersive. And here's the big part. As of the DualShock's release, it officially became the default controller for PlayStation. The new PS1 bundles came with it, and most late generation games supported it. And from this point on, every PlayStation controller will be based on what DualShock introduced. So what do you do when you have built something that good? Well, if you're Sony, you make it even better with the PlayStation 2. When the PlayStation 2 launched in 2000, it came with a controller that looked almost exactly like the old one. But don't let the looks fool you. The DualShock 2 packed some subtle but powerful upgrades. Sure, the layout was familiar, but this time, every button could feel how hard you're pressing it. Yes, the circle, cross, square, triangle, even the D-pad and the shoulder buttons, they were all pressure sensitive. The analog of L3 and R3 is also even to press. These are the buttons in case you don't know. The implementation, in racing games like Gran Turismo, you're pressing the cross button gently gave you a smooth start, while flooring it gave you a full throttle. Let me give you the easy thing. In GTA San Andreas, when you get to the ambulance or fire truck, if you press the R3 quickly, the siren turns on. But if you press it gently or hold it down slowly, you will get a regular horn sound instead. And yes, even the R3 button was pressure sensitive too. These features made the DualShock 2 feel more connected to your actions. It wasn't just a press and go anymore, but it was press and control how much. Sony didn't need to change much because the DualShock 2 just worked. But when the PlayStation 3 was on the horizon, Sony decided to shake things up. And let's just say, not everyone liked what they saw. So after the massive success of the DualShock 2, everyone was excited to see what Sony would come up with next. And then in E3 2005 happened, Sony walked on stage and revealed something that looked like a boomerang or maybe a weird alien remote. The internet called it as the Boomerang controller. And it was Sony's first look at the future of the PlayStation 3. The design, sleek, silver, and very different. It curved upwards, had no rumble, and looked nothing like any controller before it. But here's the thing, it looked futuristic, but it didn't feel good. Gamers said it was too long, too awkward, and just plain uncomfortable. It got roasted online hard. And honestly, Sony listened. The Boomerang never made it past the prototype stage. So the next time Sony showed up with a controller, they brought something more familiar. Lecture, wireless, and motion control. And finally, something gamers could actually hold comfortably. Enter the 6-axis. This was the first PlayStation controller that went fully wireless, using Bluetooth, and came with a built-in rechargeable battery. But more importantly, it had a brand new feature and some notable change. The motion control, shoulder trigger button, and no analog toggle button. You could tilt, turn, and shake the controller, and the game will respond. It sounded futuristic at the time, like PlayStation's answer to the Wii. But here's the catch. The 6-axis had no vibration, no rumble, and nothing more. Sony said it was because rumble will interfere with motion sensor, but in reality, they were caught in the lawsuit over the vibration tag called immersion. And the result? The controller felt light, too light, and some gamers even said it felt like a plastic toy. But thankfully, it didn't last long. Just a year later, Sony settled the lawsuit and brought back the one thing gamers had been missing, the rumble. And with it came the true successor to the DualShock legacy, the DualShock 3. The DualShock 3 were introduced in 2007 after settling the lawsuit over vibration technology with immersion. It looked just like a 6-axis, but now it could shake. Explosions, crashes, gunfire, all the feedback that made the games feel alive was back in your hands. And the best part? They didn't ditch the motion controls. The DualShock 3 had both the 6-axis motion sensing and classic vibration. But it wasn't perfect. The L2 and R2 triggers of the 6-axis and the DualShock 3 were slippery, like a finger sliding up in the middle of a boss fight. Slippery. A lot of players ended up buying those little plastic clip-on trigger extenders just to fix the feel. So with all that in mind, when it came to design the next controller for the PlayStation 4, Sony knew exactly what they had to fix and what they had to upgrade. And that's how we got the DualShock 4 that introduced in 2013. along with the PlayStation 4. First off, it just feels better. The grips are chunkier, the triggers were tighter, and the analog sticks are way more responsive. But then came the upgrades. A touchpad in the middle of a controller. You can swipe it, press it, use it to open maps, type text, or even play minigames. A glowing light bar at the top shows your player number, your health, or whether you're being chased by the cops in a GTA. And for the streamers and screenshot addicts, say hello to the share button. Instant access to screenshots and video clips with no capture card needed. It also added the headphone jack, so now you could play at night without waking up the whole house. In short, the DualShock 4 wasn't just an upgrade, it was a statement. But then came the PlayStation 5 in 2020, and Sony decided it was time for something even bolder. A controller that didn't just respond to your hands, but talk back to them. Welcome to the DualSense. This wasn't just a game change, but it was a shift in how games feel, because the Sense is the main topic that I want to talk about. The DualSense introduced the haptic feedback, a new kind of vibration that doesn't just rumble, but it whispers, it pulses, it reacts. Walking on snow, you will feel the crunch. Driving through rain, you'll sense the pattern. Every texture, every action, translated into your hands. And then came the adaptive triggers. These L2 and R2 buttons push back. Throwing a bowstring feels tight. Accelerate the car has weight, and your fingers know the difference. Add to that a built-in mic, improved audio feedback, and a subtle glow around the touchpad. And you have got a controller that isn't just smart, but it's alive. From a simple gray controller with no sticks or rumble, to a futuristic device that can push back, vibrate with detail, and even listen to your voice, the PlayStation has come to a long way. But what's really amazing is how every generation added something new, without ever losing the feel of what made it the PlayStation in the first place. The symbols are still there, the spirit of control and precision is still there. And now, with the DualSense, we're not just playing games, we're feeling them. Thanks for tuning in this video, and if you enjoyed this deep dive of the evolution of PlayStation controllers, give it a like and let me know in the comment section which PlayStation controller is your favorite and why. And you can add more information or give some corrections in the comment section. And you can check out my previous video on the history of the PlayStation itself. The history behind the console is just as wild as the controller it came with. Stick around and subscribe because new episodes will be broadcasted every Saturday. And I'd love to have you with me. And see you on the next episode every Saturday on Saturday Stories. And in the end, I'm Luthfi. As always, have a great day and see ya.